I'm going to share our design for a crucible holder. We needed something simple to use, lightweight and thin enough to fit inside of the kiln, but still strong enough to be able to pick up a crucible full of aluminum. It takes two people to operate. There's a clamp on one side to grip on to the crucible, and then with one person on each end, you can lift it up and carry it where you need to go. As you can see from our test here, things worked out pretty well. Here we have all the parts that we're going to need. Everything is 1/8 inch steel. Starting at the top, we have a piece of channel, 1.5 inch wide, 1 inch tall, and 17.25 inch long. The next is a 42 inch long piece of 1x1 square tube. We have two 6 inch long pieces of 1 inch wide flat, and then four 8.5 inch pieces of 1 inch wide flat. Two of them I've already curved here in this picture. And then we have two more 12 inch long 1x1 inch square tube. I cut all the pieces with a 14 inch crosscut saw. This is just me cutting one of the 1 inch wide flats. The rest of the cuts looked pretty similar. To curve the four pieces of 1 inch flat that grip the crucible, I used some aluminum cylinders I had lying around and a shop press. I'm sure there are better tools for bending a curve in metal, but this is what I had. Since the cylinders were a smaller radius than the crucible, I bent it in the middle, then between the middle and each end. And then I bent between that bend and the end again. This is the second piece that I bent. On the first piece, I spent more time bending it a little, checking the curve against the crucible, then bending a little more and checking until it looked right. They made a curve that closely matched the curve of the crucible. We were engineering this as we were building it, but we decided to space the two arms so that the movable one, which we're demonstrating, the one on the right here is the movable one, it's going to move in slightly when grouping the crucible. We left about 15 inches to hold on to each side and 10 inches of space for the crucible. When I engineer as I build, I like to start with the parts that don't move, so I welded the rigid arm first, right at a 90-degree angle. Once that was tacked together, I welded the two pieces of 6-inch long flat to the other arm. This is how that arm will pivot around the main support. Those extend past the arm enough to go over the main support and connect to our piece of channel. I used some wood to get our crucible holder in a position so we'd have a good idea of how things would fit when we were grabbing the crucible. The top rib we put about halfway up the crucible, And since the lower rib is positioned where the crucible curves in, we added a spacer. It's made out of 2 pieces of 1-inch flat. I welded those 2 spacers together, and then I actually added another small little piece. That piece there is going to help the ribs stick out a little bit and kind of hug a little tighter to the bottom of the crucible. I got the same setup on the other arm. Now I just got to clamp down and weld those ribs onto the end there. Please ignore my ugly welds for the duration of the video. I also welded the other pieces a little more, the piece I just had kind of tacked together. We can start to see this take shape, the bottom ribs gripping the bottom of the crucible real nicely there. Clamp on and then weld the middle ribs. Now we're going to attach that piece of channel. This will be used to clamp down on the side. It is welded at a 90-degree angle. It's going to be bolted in such a way that when you push down on it, it will actually clamp in a little tighter than 90 degrees onto the crucible. Over on the drill press to drill those holes through the swing arm and through that main support there. Everything was fitting pretty tight. Had to use some WD-40 to slide these on. I honestly left this part of the video in so that the whole thing didn't look too easy. The holes that I drilled, they were a little bit smaller than the bolt and it was a bit of a tight fit. I spent quite a bit of time trying to get that to work right so that I could get that bolt to fit in there. Well, you get the idea. I drilled for a long time. And eventually I got the holes to all line up. Now that we got it all together, we can try it out here. Works pretty well. I just been tack welding everything together, so I took this back apart. Wanted to add a few more welds, make sure it's nice and structurally sound. Came apart a little better than it went together. But I'll definitely want to add some welds around a lot of the bends and things like that. The things are going to have the stress points. Now that we got a lot more weld on there, it's still looking pretty sloppy. Unfortunately, where I welded on the inside made it just a little bit too tight. So I have to clean a lot of that up, get a Dremel tool in there so that comes back together. Once that was cleaned up, we're going to put that back together. Again, still kind of tight. Just takes a bit of pounding. Since I was having too much trouble putting it back together, my 12-year-old son jumped in and tried to help out. He also struggled a little bit, but eventually we got it all the way together. With everything put together, we thought we'd do a dry run, fill a crucible up with some raw aluminum, just to add some weight to it. Nothing molten, nothing hot. I want to just make sure that we can do this without dropping everything. Be able to pick it up, put it into the kiln, and then clamp on it and pull it back out. Hope you enjoyed the video. I tried to keep it short and to the point, so if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments.